Listen to that sound, that soft, wet, rhythmic licking coming from the corner of the room at 11 at night. That is not your dog cleaning himself. That is your dog talking to you, and most owners never learn to listen. One paw, over and over, night after night. It looks small. It is not small, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly why your dog keeps going back to that same spot, including the one reason almost no owner ever suspects. The one I always save for last because it changes how you look at everything that comes before it. I'm a veterinarian, and I've been treating dogs for more than 20 years. This exact habit walks into my clinic every single week, sometimes twice in one afternoon. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments your dog's name and how old they are. It helps me picture exactly who we're talking about tonight, and it makes the rest of this a lot more useful for you. If you've caught yourself snapping, leave it at that paw and feeling a little defeated when your dog goes right back to it 30 seconds later, that is not a failure on your part. Paw licking is quiet. It hides in plain sight until the fur is stained or the smell shows up, and almost every owner scolds it long before they understand what's actually happening underneath the behavior. You are not a careless pet parent, and you are not imagining that something is off. You are watching closely enough right now to look for the real answer instead of reaching for the quick fix everyone else settles for. And that already puts your dog ahead of where most dogs in this situation end up. Here's what's actually happening on that paw, and it's simpler than most owners assume once you see the pattern. A dog's paw sits low and moist, and it touches everything the dog walks through in a single day. Grass, carpet, pollen tracked in from the yard, dust from under the couch, whatever is hiding in the flower bed. When the skin down there gets irritated by an allergen, a yeast overgrowth, a flea bite, joint pain, or plain stress, the brain reads that irritation as discomfort, and licking becomes the release valve the dog reaches for. It feels good for a moment, the same way scratching a mosquito bite feels good for exactly 1 second before it makes the bite worse. But saliva keeps the skin damp long after the licking stops, and damp skin is exactly where yeast and bacteria multiply fastest. The same way a wet towel left balled up at the bottom of a gym bag turns sour within a day. So the very thing that soothes the itch in the moment is quietly feeding the problem underneath it every single time. That is the trap this whole habit sits inside. Relief right now and a worse paw tomorrow. No owner sets out to make it worse. It just happens quietly, one lick at a time, while everyone in the house is asleep and nobody's watching closely enough to notice the pattern forming underneath. A little licking after a walk through wet grass is completely normal. Dogs do that. It's over inside a minute, and it means absolutely nothing. What's different and what deserves your attention is a dog who returns to the exact same paw again and again, especially once you start noticing a change in the fur itself rather than just the behavior. The first thing to rule out is allergy, and in my clinic, it's the most common cause behind this by a wide margin. Environmental allergens like pollen or dust, or an ingredient in the food that doesn't agree with your dog, tend to show up as redness, swelling, or thinning fur right at the base of the toes, and that reaction can land on the feet in exactly the way hay fever lands on a person's nose. The same overreaction, just a different exit point on the body. Right alongside allergies sits a yeast overgrowth, and this one has a smell you will recognize the moment I describe it. A musty, corn chip smell rising off damp fur between the toes, sometimes strong enough to notice from across the room. That yeast is called Malassezia, a natural organism that already lives on every dog's skin and only becomes a problem when it multiplies out of control in a warm, damp spot, which is precisely what a constantly licked paw turns itself into. The third thing to check takes 30 seconds, and most owners have never actually done it. Part the fur near the base of the tail and around the paws, and look for small black flecks caught in the coat. Wipe one onto a damp paper towel or a wet cotton pad. If it turns reddish brown, that confirms live fleas are present on your dog right now. Not maybe, not possibly, present. Fleas irritate the skin directly with every bite, and a dog will often lick the paws raw, trying to relieve an itch that's actually coming from bites much closer to the tail. If you've been bathing and treating the coat and still smelling that yeasty note between the toes, or still finding those flecks no matter how often you check, this next stretch is exactly the part I want you to sit with, because it changes what you do next. If this is the first time you've connected that smell on your dog's paw to an actual cause instead of writing it off as wet dog, that's exactly the kind of thing I want more owners to walk away knowing. So if this is helping already, go ahead and subscribe. There's no number I'm chasing here. I just want more dogs looked at the right way instead of guessed at. And a like genuinely helps this reach another owner lying awake listening to the same sound you were last night. I think of Bella, a 4-year-old terrier mix, whose owner brought her into my clinic with one front paw licked down to raw, stained skin. She assumed Bella was simply bored, home alone too many hours during the week, and had already tried 2 different bitter-tasting sprays from the pet store with no change at all. The real cause turned out to be a mild seasonal allergy nobody had ever thought to connect to her feet, since the rest of her coat looked completely fine and she wasn't scratching anywhere else. 3 weeks into a vinegar soak, an omega-3 supplement, and a proper allergy plan from our clinic, Bella stopped fixating on that paw entirely, and her owner caught her one evening simply resting her chin on top of it, quiet, instead of chewing at it the way she had every night for months. That's usually the moment an owner tells me they finally slept through the night too. Left alone, this does not stay small, and it rarely stays where it started. A yeast-heavy paw turns into broken raw skin from the sheer repetition of the licking itself, the fur worn away faster than it can regrow. Broken skin can become what's called a lick granuloma, a firm raised sore that forms once the licking wears all the way through the skin. And that kind of sore can take months of dedicated treatment to fully close, even with everything done right. What starts as a quiet habit at 11 at night can end as a secondary bacterial infection needing antibiotics, and in stubborn cases, weeks spent in a cone your dog hates and you hate putting on him. That is the direction this heads if the real cause never gets identified and only the symptom gets managed. But allergy, yeast, and fleas are not the whole story, and they're not even the part most owners are missing. 2 more causes sit further back, quieter than the rest, and they explain the cases that don't respond no matter how carefully the skin itself gets treated. Here's the one most owners never suspect, and the one I promised you earlier tonight. Sometimes the paw itself is not the actual problem at all. A dog with sore joints or early arthritis will often lick or nibble at the paw on the side that hurts, because the paw becomes the exact spot the discomfort gets redirected to, in much the same way a person will absentmindedly rub a sore knee without ever quite thinking about why they're doing it. Watch for a limp, stiffness after resting, or a sudden reluctance to jump onto the couch or into the car alongside the licking. If those show up together, the joint underneath may be driving this far more than the skin itself. And then there is anxiety and plain boredom, which show up more often than owners expect. Some dogs lick a paw at very specific, repeatable times, every night right before bed, every time they're left alone, every stretch where nothing else is happening to occupy them. That licking releases a small, soothing chemical response in the brain, which is exactly why it becomes a groove a dog settles into and returns to, whether or not the skin itself was ever the true issue to begin with. Once you have a sense of which of these it likely is, here's what actually goes in the bowl and on the paw tonight. Start by hunting the trigger itself before you treat anything. Check between every toe and pad for redness, hidden debris, a flea, or a burr caught in the fur, because removing the actual irritant sometimes stops the licking outright before you've done anything else at all. For allergy or yeast-driven licking, a diluted apple cider vinegar soak helps rebalance the skin's surface against that yeast, the same way a little dish soap resets a greasy pan back to clean. Mix roughly 1 part raw, unfiltered vinegar to 3 parts warm water for a small dog, or closer to 1 part vinegar to 2 parts water for a medium or large dog. Soak the paw for 3 to 5 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, then dry thoroughly between the toes afterward, since leftover moisture undoes the entire point of doing the soak in the first place. This is also exactly where I need to be direct with you, because it matters more than the rest of this instruction combined. If that paw is already raw, cracked, or bleeding, skip the vinegar soak completely. It will sting broken skin badly and can slow healing rather than help it, and that paw needs your veterinarian's attention, not a home remedy from the kitchen. For the allergy and inflammation piece working from the inside, a fish oil supplement added to the bowl, dosed by the product's own weight guide and increased gradually over a week or 2, supports the skin's barrier and calms general inflammation from underneath. Most owners see calmer, less flaky skin within 4 to 6 weeks of steady use, not overnight and not from a single dose. And if boredom or anxiety looks like the real driver behind the licking, the fix is not on the paw at all. A slower feeder that stretches out mealtime, a short walk built around sniffing instead of just walking in a straight line, or a stuffed chew toy given right at the hour the licking usually starts, gives the mouth and the mind something else to focus on. And it often does more for that dog than any cream ever could. For a dog dealing with joint pain, the vinegar soak and the omega-3 both still help the skin around the paw. But the real relief there comes from your veterinarian addressing the joint itself. If the skin is raw or bleeding, stop everything and call the vet. That single line matters more than anything else in this entire video, so hold on to it above all the rest. No soak, no supplement, no home routine belongs anywhere near a paw that's already broken open. That paw belongs in front of your veterinarian. Plain and simple. None of what we've covered tonight replaces your veterinarian when the cause needs more than a bowl can give it. Fleas need a real vet-approved preventive, not vinegar swirled into the water bowl and hoped for. Arthritis needs proper joint management, sometimes medication, sometimes both, and a plan built around your dog's specific joints. And never reach for undiluted vinegar, tea tree oil, or any concentrated essential oil directly on a paw. Tea tree oil in particular is toxic if a dog licks it off and absorbs it, and grapes, raisins, onion, garlic, and xylitol have no place anywhere near the bowl, regardless of what you happen to be treating that week. If you've tried the soak and the omega-3 for a few weeks and that paw looks the same or worse, that's your sign this needs an exam, not more time waiting it out at home. One more thing before you start tonight, because this part gets skipped more than any other. Don't begin the vinegar soak, a new supplement, and a diet change all in the same week. A dog's stomach and skin both handle one new thing at a time, far better than several changes stacked together. And layering everything at once just hides what was actually helping. Start with the trigger hunt and the soak this week. Add the omega-3 the following week once that's settled. And bring in enrichment once the paw itself has had a real chance to calm down and stay calm. So tell me, which paw does your dog fixate on? And have you ever actually caught that corn chip smell on it before tonight? If this helped you understand what your dog has been trying to tell you all along, go ahead and subscribe, and a like goes a long way toward putting this in front of another worried owner sitting up at 11 o'clock listening to the exact same sound you were. A dog who finally stops chasing that one paw, who just lies there with it